Have you ever heard something not just with your ears, but with your heart? A voice that didn't come from outside, but from within. A moment when the words didn't just sound true, they felt true. That's what happened the first time I really listened to the Quran. Not as a book, not as a religion, but as a conversation, a quiet echo in the middle of the noise. And it didn't just tell me what I was, it reminded me of who I could become. This isn't about preaching. This isn't about convincing. This is about discovering. Why does this book, this centuries-old scripture, keep speaking to people across time, across culture, across pain? Why does it reach into places you didn't even know were wounded and begin to heal them? Why, in your darkest moments, do its verses suddenly feel like they were written for you? If you've ever asked yourself that question, even once, stay with me, because today we're not just reciting verses. We're uncovering the reason why your heart keeps turning back, why something inside you stirs every time you hear those words, and why maybe, just maybe, this isn't a coincidence. Maybe it's your moment. Let's find out together. When the Quran speaks, it doesn't speak like the world does. It doesn't ride the trends. It doesn't rely on temporary relevance. It speaks in a voice that echoes through the chambers of time itself. That's why when you open its pages, even in the 21st century, it feels like it was written just for you, just for this moment, just for the pain or peace you're feeling right now. Because the Quran was never bound to one era. It was revealed in the deserts of Arabia over 1,400 years ago, but it speaks with a tone that transcends generations. That's why a verse that healed someone in the 7th century can heal a broken soul today. That's why someone in a war-torn village can cry over the same words that someone in a high-rise office in New York feels hit by. The Quran doesn't age, it lives. What makes it unique is how it doesn't need to shift or adapt to remain relevant. Its relevance comes from its core. It's not chasing trends, it's addressing truth. It speaks to the human condition, the battles inside, the questions we're scared to ask, the hopes we bury, the regrets we try to forget. And because those things don't change across time, the Quran remains as needed today as it was the day it was revealed. It speaks about grief in a way that soothes the mother who lost her child, and speaks about arrogance in a way that confronts the man who's drowning in pride. It doesn't care where you're from. It doesn't care what year it is. It's speaking to what makes you human. People scroll through feeds all day looking for one quote that might inspire them, one post that might make them feel something. But then a single verse from the Quran shows up, and it's like your whole soul turns toward it, like it was waiting to be reminded of what's real. That's what divine language does. It pierces through the distractions. It bypasses the intellect and hits the heart. You don't even have to fully understand the Arabic to feel it. It's like something ancient inside you recognizes its source. The language of the Quran is not ordinary. It's poetic without being poetry. It's commanding without being forceful. It guides without sounding like it's just advising. It talks about rain and thunder and mountains, but somehow it's talking about you. It talks about nations before you, people long gone, but somehow it's describing your thoughts, your emotions, your struggles. That's the kind of timeless speech we're dealing with. That's why when you hear it, it doesn't matter what year you're living in. It speaks directly to the part of you that hasn't changed since the day you were born, the soul. And no matter how much the world changes, no matter how digital or modern or disconnected it gets, the soul still hungers for what only the Quran can feed. The Quran has a way of reaching into the quiet corners of your heart, the ones even you try to ignore. It's not just a book that talks about right and wrong. It goes deeper. It talks about the things you bury, the truths you run from, the guilt you smile over, and the loneliness you pretend isn't there. It doesn't just skim the surface like so many of us do when we talk to each other. No, it gets in close. It looks you in the eyes, even when you're looking away. It speaks when you're tired of explaining. And it doesn't flinch when it sees your weakness. It holds the mirror up, even when you're not ready to see your reflection. There are moments when you're sitting alone and you open it up, not even sure why. Maybe it's out of habit, maybe it's desperation, but then a verse hits you like it was written that very second for the very thing you're going through. It's not guessing, it knows. It names the anxiety, it recognizes the pride, it calls out the self-deception. The Quran doesn't just give comfort, it gives clarity. It shows you what's really going on inside of you when everyone else just sees the mask you wear. It exposes what the ego hides, not to shame you, but to free you. And that's why it can feel so raw, so personal. Because while most of the world is either praising you or tearing you down, the Quran speaks with a different kind of honesty. It tells you when you're slipping. It tells you when you're lying to yourself. But it also tells you there's still hope. It brings the storm and the shelter at the same time. It confronts, but it doesn't crush. It wounds to heal. It doesn't leave you naked in your truth. It clothes you in mercy. People go to therapy. They scroll through endless content. They travel halfway across the world trying to find themselves. But then one verse from the Quran shows up, and suddenly it's like a door opens inside that you didn't even know was locked. It's not just inspiration, it's confrontation with compassion. And maybe that's what makes it so powerful. It knows what you're hiding. It knows the war you're fighting. And it chooses not to reject you, but to reach you. That's why it feels like it's always speaking directly to you, because it's not guessing, it's revealing, not with judgment, but with precision, because the one who revealed it knows the heart better than anyone. There's something different about words that come from the Creator. They don't just sound wise, they carry weight. They don't just advise you, they reshape you. When people speak, even with the best intentions, their words often reflect their own flaws, their own experiences, their own limitations. But when the Quran speaks, it's not coming from a limited human perspective. It's not theory, it's not speculation, it's revelation. That's why when you read it, it doesn't feel like a suggestion, it feels like a command wrapped in love. A truth that doesn't need to scream to be heard. There's authority in it, a calm but powerful certainty that speaks straight to your spirit. That's why it can stop you in your tracks. You could be scrolling through life numb, distracted, feeling lost, and then, bam, a verse. It's not loud, but it hits. It's not long, but it lingers. It says more in a few words than some books do in hundreds of pages, because those are divine words. They were meant to be absorbed. They were meant to be absorbed. And that's why they echo inside your heart long after the sound has gone. You can listen to 1,000 speeches, attend 100 seminars, read every self-help book on the shelf, and still feel like something's missing. That's because most of that advice, while useful, comes from people like you trying to figure life out. But the Quran doesn't try to figure it out. It knows. It sees through the confusion. It doesn't just point at the symptoms, it diagnoses the root. It doesn't just tell you what's wrong, it shows you the way back. Because it's not just here to motivate you, it's here to transform you. The difference lies in the source. A human can give you advice that inspires, but when your Creator speaks to you, it awakens something ancient inside of you. It reminds you of a truth you always knew but somehow forgot. It speaks to the part of you that remembers where you came from. That's why it feels like the Quran doesn't just speak to you, it speaks for you. Like it knows what you couldn't say, what you couldn't admit, what you couldn't even understand. And it's not just about emotional comfort, it's about divine alignment. The Quran doesn't pamper the ego, it purifies the heart. It doesn't always tell you what you want to hear, but it tells you what you need to know. That's why it's powerful. That's why it sticks, because it's not just human wisdom. It's guidance from the one who created the soul it's speaking to. It's not temporary advice, it's eternal truth. And that's why it keeps reaching the heart in ways no other book ever can. Every time you open the Quran, it meets you exactly where you are. Not where you pretend to be, not where you wish you were, but where you actually are. Whether you're standing tall or barely hanging on, the Quran doesn't wait for you to be perfect. It speaks to the real you, the tired you, the confused you, the regretful you, the hopeful you. And it does it without judgment. It doesn't look at your past and lock you into it. Instead, it reaches into the present moment and offers you a way forward, even if you feel like you're too far gone. That's what makes it so powerful. It's not just for saints and scholars. It's for seekers, sinners, and strugglers alike. One of the most remarkable things about the Quran is how its meaning can shift as you grow. Not because the words change, but because you do. A verse you read a year ago might not have touched you then, but today it brings you to your knees. A chapter you once skipped over now feels like it's breathing life into your soul. That's not coincidence. That's divine design. The Quran is alive in that way. It speaks to the version of you that exists right now. It's always relevant because it speaks through layers, emotional layers, intellectual layers, spiritual layers. And every time you return to it, it finds a new way to enter your heart. It's not like any other book you've read. Books give you information. The Quran gives you direction. Books may impress your mind, but the Quran imprints on your soul. It doesn't wait for you to have it all figured out before offering you peace. It offers it even in your mess, even in your chaos, even in your failure. It says, turn to me even now, and that invitation is never revoked. That mercy is never denied. The door is always open. No matter how many times you walked away, no matter how long it's been since you felt close, the Quran doesn't hold that against you. It welcomes you back like you never left. You could be at your lowest, ashamed of who you've become, unsure if you're even worthy of being guided, but then you open that book and the words aren't scolding you. They're calling you, not to punish, but to purify. Not to crush, but to correct. That's the kind of mercy that turns people around. That's the kind of love that doesn't come from people, it comes from the Creator. And that's why so many people who are broken find healing in its verses, because it doesn't need you to be perfect to start. It just needs you to be present. And when you are, the Quran becomes more than a book. It becomes a friend, a mirror, a light, and most of all, a bridge between who you are and who you were always meant to be. Prayer in Islam is more than just a ritual. It's a conversation with the divine that anchors the believer in a world full of distractions and chaos. When a Muslim prays, it's not about reciting empty words or fulfilling a cultural duty. It's about stepping out of the noise and into sacred silence, standing in direct communication with the one who created you. The movements, the words, the rhythm, every part of the prayer is designed to realign the heart, refocus the mind, and remind the soul of its true origin. It's a return 5 times a day to the truth you keep forgetting in the rush of life. And that return, it's not weakness, it's strength. It takes courage to stop everything, to bow down, to humble yourself in a world that keeps telling you to stand tall and be proud no matter what. Prayer teaches the exact opposite. It teaches surrender. And in that surrender, you find power. Each movement of the prayer has purpose. When the forehead touches the ground in sujood, it's the ultimate act of humility, but it also becomes the moment of the greatest closeness to God. That's not just symbolic. That's spiritual reality, because when you're at your lowest position physically, your soul is lifted. You let go of ego. You let go of the illusion of control. And when you let go, you're not left empty. You're filled with something greater than what you release. Peace, clarity, presence. That's what real power feels like. Not dominating others, but mastering yourself. And the beauty of prayer is that it doesn't change based on your mood, your success, or your failures. It's constant. It's reliable. It's the daily reminder that your worth isn't based on how the world sees you, but how your Creator sees you. It reconnects you to the eternal when everything around you feels temporary. It grounds you when your life feels like it's spinning out of control. It disciplines you when your desires try to lead you astray. It comforts you when your heart feels heavy. And it teaches you to show up to your faith, to your Lord, to yourself. That kind of structure isn't confinement, it's freedom. Because when you commit to that sacred rhythm, you stop being a slave to everything else. You're no longer chasing validation from people who change their minds about you. You're no longer imprisoned by your fears or insecurities. You're standing before the one who knows you completely and loves you anyway. That kind of intimacy rewires you. You start walking differently. You start seeing the world through a lens of meaning. And every time you stand for prayer, it's like you're reminding yourself of who you are, and more importantly, whose you are. And that knowledge, that connection, that sacred moment of stillness, it changes everything. The Quran doesn't just speak in a way that touches the mind. It resonates with the deepest parts of the human experience. It doesn't only give laws or history or theology, it tells stories. It paints moments. It recounts the cries of the heart and the whispers of the soul. And that's where its unmatched emotional impact comes from. It isn't a book you simply read. It's a book that reads you. It catches you in the middle of your struggles and speaks to them directly. It reflects your fears, your doubts, your pain, and then gently offers healing. There's a softness in its strength, and a strength in its softness. That balance, that divine eloquence, is what makes it unforgettable once it finds a way into your heart. What moves people about the Quran isn't always the complexity of its verses. Sometimes it's just one sentence that turns everything around. Just a phrase that echoes in your chest long after you close the book. Because when the Quran speaks of despair, it doesn't just warn against it. It lifts you out of it. When it talks about hope, it doesn't sell illusions. It offers promises grounded in truth. It acknowledges human weakness, not to shame us, but to remind us that mercy is always greater. That's why so many people cry when they hear it, not because it's sad, but because it finally puts words to what they've been feeling in silence. There's also a rhythm to it, a divine cadence that moves with precision and power. Even people who don't understand the language often say they feel something stir when they hear it recited. That's not coincidence. That's design. The sound itself, the pauses, the flow, it penetrates the heart before the mind can even interpret the meaning. And when you do understand the meaning, it's like a wave crashing over your soul. A verse can stop you mid-thought, mid-breath, mid-life decision, and redirect your entire path, not with force, not with manipulation, but with truth, spoken so beautifully it becomes irresistible. It's also deeply personal. Two people can read the same verse and walk away with completely different awakenings. That's because the Quran speaks to you according to your state. It doesn't just inform, it transforms. And the more you open your heart to it, the deeper it goes. It doesn't get old. It doesn't become irrelevant. It doesn't need to be rebranded or reimagined, because what it offers is timeless: guidance, clarity, healing, purpose. And that's why when it touches someone's heart, they often say it feels like it was speaking directly to them. That's not exaggeration. That's what happens when the word of the Creator meets the soul of the created. It's not just language, it's a lifeline. Not just wisdom, it's a whisper from above, reminding you who you are, what you were made for, and who's been waiting for your return all along. So when you ask, why does the Quran keep speaking to my heart like this? The answer is simple, yet profound. Because it was always meant to. It wasn't written to entertain you or impress you with grand poetry. It was revealed to wake you up, to guide you, to meet you in your darkest hour and remind you that the light was never gone. You just stopped looking in its direction. It speaks not only to your intellect, but to your soul, gently, powerfully, and persistently. It doesn't chase you with threats. It invites you with mercy. It doesn't ask you to be perfect. It calls you to be present. And no matter how far you've drifted, its message will always find a way to pull you back. Because it's not just ink on paper. It's the living word of the one who made your heart. So of course, it knows exactly how to reach it. Good luck and thank you message. May your journey always lead you closer to truth. And may your heart remain open to the voice that was meant for you all along. Keep seeking, keep listening, and trust that every sincere step forward will be answered with divine guidance. Thank you for walking this path with us today. Until next time, stay inspired, stay grounded, and may peace be with you always.